Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Off Script with Pastor Jared.
And Aaron, the intern.
Welcome, Aaron.
Thank you for having me, I guess. It's an honor.
Well, I want to talk today about a topic that did not come from the audience, but came from my mind, which is always a dangerous thing. And I'll tell you how I came upon this topic. I was watching an episode, and I will tell everyone listening. I forced Aaron to watch this clip before we came on the podcast, so he has watched the clip.
Yes,
but he didn't more than about 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
All right. So I was watching an episode. I went through a kick of Anthony Bourdain a while ago.
I never even heard of him.
And he does the traveling show, the cooking, the culture. He goes and visits cities and does profiles on different food culture stuff in the city. And I've always thought it was a cool show. Some of it's a little questionable, but most of the time they're good, fun episodes. And anyway, I was watching one from France. It was in Lyon, and they were doing a profile on French cuisine in the city. And the whole episode builds up to this it's like the final boss in the video game. And they get to Paul Bocuse, and we were talking about how I think now watching that, I really feel like Ratatouille-based Gusteau, the Gusteau's anyone can cook guy, and that whole scene off of this restaurant.
It definitely is.
So I was watching this episode, and, Bourdain has been around the world. He's seen some things, and he's with a professional chef that's with him, and they go to the Paul Bocuse restaurant, and they get the star treatment. They're getting the 4-course, like the greatest hits, the top thing that this guy's been known for of his career. This guy's old when the episode is aired, but he's there at the table, like taking it all in, like the mob boss, just sitting there watching them roll out these. And he's got all these little minions, the young interns in the aprons, in the hats, and they're doing the tableside service. And they bring out the first. You said you recognized it. It was like a truffle soup.
Yeah, it was a puff pastry of some kind. I don't know
soup
what
inside.
kind it was. Yeah,
and it was like, now this wasn't the bread bowl at Panera Bread, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh no, it wasn't. Yeah, definitely not.
They called it truffle soup, but to me it looked like a French onion that you had to carve inside.
Yeah.
That they cooked the whole bowl inside the oven.
Yeah.
And then it had the pastry on top. It was
satisfying to cut through.
It was so cool. And then they went on, earlier in the episode, they did this thing where they would cook a chicken inside like a pig's bladder. And it was like very strange. And you had to constantly keep it wet. So like some guy's watching it for an hour, just ladling soup over it. And so like they bring that out on a tray with like oxtails and sausage and potatoes. And remember they brought that thing. They took like 2 guys to carry this thing out.
Yeah. Okay, I know what you're talking about now.
The big
platter. The
big
one. Okay, yeah.
And it has like 10 different kinds of meat on it. And it looked with the bones shooting up in the air like the roast beast from the Grinch. They even took the roast beast. And so you got that picture. I've always thought about that with those bones sticking straight up like the rib roast,
I see it.
And so then they move on to, what was the one? Oh, the fish where they
that was
this
cool.
was my favorite one. They take this, was it like a sea bass or something? And they stuff it full of like this lobster sauce, and then they put this coating over top of it and meticulously carve a fish out of the bread coating on top. Like they make a fish out of the bread that they overlay on top of the fish. It was crazy detail. Like every scale they made. And then they bring that out of the oven, and then they finally come out with like the final thing was this like wild hare, this rabbit, that they had, and
that's crazy.
They cook it this certain way, stand it up, and it's got like this chocolate looking sauce on the outside.
The chocolate threw me off, but
apparently, I mean, everyone's going nuts over it. So like, what really got me, I don't know the details of cooking, but when there's like 3 and 4 chefs on the outside, like taking selfies with it, and they're just giddy fangirling over this what they're seeing.
He said it was the best meal in his life.
Yeah, Anthony Bourdain said it's like the meal of a lifetime or something. And so, I remember watching this, and feeling things. Did you feel anything when you watched it? I know you were watching it in my office, not in the privacy of your own home. But were there any feels conveyed that before I tell my feels?
Maybe some hunger pains to want
Okay.
to try it. But also, I felt a little bit weird just because it looked so much.
Because I made you watch a cooking show in my office?
Well, not just that.
Okay.
But yes. But it's kind of like when you have like someone order like a whole fish and like you got the eyeball staring at you and you're like, this is kind of weird, but I'm sure it tastes good. That's kind of how I felt about.
Okay. Well, they did do a lot of
the hair.
Yeah. The
hair
left
was
the eyes
like,
on the bunny.
Yeah, it like looked like a bunny.
Okay.
But anyways,
well,
I'm sure it tastes great.
That wasn't really what I was going for, but thank you for your response. But anyway, what I was going to say is something hit me watching that, of just this feeling of, I'm amazed at this person who has seemingly mastered a subject in life. Like, you've gotten to the point where you're looking at this man, the Paul Bocuse character, just sitting back with his arms folded, and like, he has done it. Like, he has reached the end of cooking. This is the pinnacle of progress a person can make in this, and it's like the old school way where it's all by hand and extreme details and everything. And I'm watching it and I'm just like, I'm getting a feeling where, now I don't know if this man's a believer. He's probably not. I assume he's not. But there was something weirdly almost like God honoring in the detail. Is that weird to say?
That's what you got. I mean, I see where you're coming from.
So like, the job was done so well that me as a Christian, I'm sitting back thinking, this is almost like an offering given to God. Like, it's so meticulously done. Now, I don't think that's what the man was doing in his heart. Yeah. But it's I'm sitting back like, I'm choosing this day to worship the creator rather than the creation, Yeah. Maybe those guys are worshiping the creation, but I'm sitting back watching this like, that's amazing that someone has hit a pinnacle of detail. And, you can take this example and go to other topics like, have you ever really sat and listened to Handel's Messiah done by like a choir or an orchestra that can
make
do
me
it?
Sad. We were supposed to go, and then that ice storm. Me and Zoe were going to go last month, and the ice storm hit, and we couldn't go.
I'm sorry.
So yeah.
Well,
I haven't.
you can get on Apple Music or Spotify and find, I think, the London Philharmonic and crank it in your house or something. Mm-hmm. But it's not like being there. But even the Mid-America Passion Play that has done that before, right? Yeah. The same people that have done that. Or every once in a while you hear an orchestra do the Hallelujah chorus and just nail it.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's like, there is something in that about you're reaching the mastery of music at that point where he hits, where Handel gets to that level of, I think we're approaching the pinnacle here of like what can be done with music. And there's other examples, like you might hear a poem or something, and it's just like, that is the English language taken to its max. It's as far as you can go. Or even a great sermon. Maybe you might hear a great sermon by a pastor that just lays it out, and it's just like, there it is. Yeah, that's the best thing I've ever heard.
Yeah,
and so
definitely.
But I was thinking about even with architecture, sometimes you can see this. We don't see it much anymore. I would like to lament, actually, modern architecture. Do you feel like old architecture is better than new architecture, or reverse?
Okay. I guess I would say that like the old architecture, like some of the like, sadly, empty churches in Memphis, but like some of that cool old architecture, or even like over in like, I don't know, Rome.
Right, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think that's pretty. I mean, yeah, it's
just
beautiful
detail for the sake of detail.
But I also like simplicity. But maybe that's just a young person in me.
Yeah. See, I did a few years ago. I liked that more cleaner, kind of sanitized look.
Right.
Something though, the older I get, I'm sort of like, I'm yearning for unnecessary details in things sometimes, where I want to see handmade stuff. I want to see things with colors. I want to see stuff requires time and effort.
Yeah.
And so when you do see a picture of or even you get to visit like a truly amazing cathedral. And I'm not a Catholic. You're not a Catholic, but I think what was lost is they used to try to use architecture to capture the transcendence of God in the building. They would try to show via the architecture how small we are and how large God is, by evoking that feeling in you as you sat in a building where the ceilings were just unnecessarily tall. I mean, you can say, like, I don't know that we need 80-foot ceilings.
Yeah, it might not be practical, but
right.
it was cool.
But they did it to just because it was to show God's really big and we're really small.
It makes you feel small when you're in there.
Yeah, or all the detail work on the walls and the pillars and the stained glass that, like, we would never spend money on that today. That, like, we would never spend to have those little tiles with all the colors and the different stories told in the glass. Like, we would not do that today. We would probably say that's bad, funding or stewardship or something. But it's amazing to see it and to evoke that sense of, like, that's just mastery level work.
I don't know why that reminds me, just like art in general. Like, it's kind of funny. Like, I don't know, I'll see memes every now and then on Instagram or something of like what modern art looks like. And it's just like a banana like pinned to a wall. And it's like, this is art. And it's like, no, that's like the Mona Lisa, that's art.
Yeah.
Like,
Starry
Nights, that's art.
That's a perfect example of like what has happened to us,
Right.
Like, I remember it. I saw another one. I know what you're talking about. I saw another one that was like, in the old days, they used to paint. Van Gogh used to paint, and it was his prized picture of the guy. What's the guy's name? Anyway, the Van Gogh, the number one. I've lost the name. But then recently they had the girls broke into the thing and throw a can of soup at it on the wall, and then they sat and duct taped themselves to the floor. It's like that's where we are today. We don't create art. We throw soup at art and tape ourselves to the floor. But anyway, now we sound like old men now, just railing, but. All that to say, there's something that's evoked in that mastery level work of something. And I think we were talking to, Isaac before we started rolling of the topic today, which is dominion. And he just casually said, but I think he's right. That word almost sounds like a negative word today. Yeah. When you hear the word dominion, I think to the non-Christian perhaps, or even some Christians, you would hear that and think, oh, that sounds like control, or that sounds like power, or that, it's something like, and then there's just this immediate pullback from it. But the reason I have this as our topic today is that what I want to show is that it's a very natural, normal, healthy thing, especially for men and Christian men, to have a desire for dominion in their lives. Now, properly used and in the right spheres,
of course.
But, just because something can be abused doesn't make the thing bad originally. So I want to look at the classic text where this comes from. So I'm gonna read Genesis 1:26 through 28. You probably knew this; these were the verses, right?
Yeah. I already had them pulled up.
You had yours pulled up, yeah. So this is, if you're listening at home or in the car, this is coming from Genesis 1. This is the creation story in the very beginning, chapter 1 of the Bible. And it's God has reached day 6. He's going through, he's making everything. And then finally we get to what would be the pinnacle of his created order, which is man. So verse 26, then God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them, man, have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. Then there's this little poem. So God created man in his own image. The image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Verse 28. And God blessed them, and God said to them, to man and woman now, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. All right, so first task for us as Bible studiers, let's trace this word dominion in the text and say what the dominion's over. All right. So you look at yours, I'll look at mine. We'll make sure we're not twisting. All right. He says, let them have dominion, verse 26, over fish of the sea.
Yep.
Okay, so I got clearance on fish.
Yes.
Is that good? All right. And over birds of the heaven.
Yep.
That's two things. My guess is it's speaking representatively, but we'll go on. Fish, birds, over livestock. Okay, now I got livestock. Cows are in the game. Sheep. And over all the earth. Okay, that's a lot. That adds a lot of extra stuff. And over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So I think that's intended to say big, small, creeping, flying. But then that little phrase that says over all the earth, I mean, that's really broad.
Right.
So we have, is there anything you would say from that verse, man does not have dominion over?
Yes.
As far as the created thing.
Okay. As far as the created thing, no.
Things.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you were looking at your little umbrella structure, you would have God as the creator up top.
Right.
God makes man, and then God gives everything else to man to have dominion over. So nothing's between man and God as a buffer that is above man. You don't run this, but it's all below him to say the earth is yours to have some level of rulership over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I would say that man has dominion over the creation, but not over the creator, and the creator has dominion over both. So,
yeah, I would agree. Okay, so glad we agree on that. Then if you look down at 28, the words used again, it kind of are just a reiteration. Have dominion over the fish, over the birds, over every living thing that moves on the earth. Now let's go back to a separate word that's like dominion, but not dominion, which is in verse 28, and that is subdue, where he says, so you get a little, I think maybe 3 points here of what God says to do. So here's your creation orders.
Okay.
Would be fruitful and multiply. I think that's one thing. Be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth. Subdue it. So I think we all know what fruitful, multiply, and fill means.
Right.
Have babies and get out and move around and be in every corner of the earth.
Yeah.
That was the issue of Babel, right? They did not.
Yeah, they're trying to.
They were fruitful and multiply. Yeah, they were fruitful. They multiplied, but they didn't fill the earth. They tried to centralize, like you said, stay in one place. So, and then this other word, subdue the earth. Now, I looked up both of these Hebrew words. So dominion, yurdu, which is to tread upon, to rule, to govern. And subdue, which is the Hebrew kibsu, which is to subjugate, to violate, to bring into bondage or enslave. Okay, so dominion has more of the rulership,
right?
Like the way you would say a king has a dominion over his subjects. Subdue has more of a it's more aggressive word, and it has more of a control feature of even to the point of this word is used to describe slavery elsewhere in the Bible, or it's a really strong word basically.
Right.
So what are we supposed to subdue? If you trace it backwards, it says, "Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it." So the it is the earth. So we're supposed to have dominion over the earth, and we're supposed to subdue the earth.
Right.
So to subdue the earth would mean what?
Yeah, to actually use it, I suppose. So like we don't just reign over it and don't do anything about it, but also, just as a master over his servants in the biblical times, we use them to accomplish our purposes or goals, whatever you might call it.
Yeah. So I mean, it has elements of almost like taming something that's wild and unkept. So it would be like if you bought a house that sat empty for 10 years or 20 years, and there was, vines growing inside the house. The garden in the backyard was just weeds circular all over the backyard.
Yeah.
And, everything needed to be fixed up. But, maybe you get your Chip and Joanna gains on. You go in there, you fix things, you break up the rocky soil in the back, you trim the stuff back, and then maybe a few months later, it's subdued. It looks like a house. It's ordered, and then all of a sudden the You got a garden in the backyard, and the plants are in order, and they're different colors, and the hinges on the house are not sideways, and things are painted. And you basically, what you did was you took something that was unruly and wild, and you made it into something with order. You tamed, you subjugated your house. You made it the way you wanted to make it. So this was a command given of man and woman to do to the earth before the fall. So this is what we're supposed to do, and it would have been what we're supposed to do whether sin entered the earth or not. We have a job that, as far as it goes in the earth, we're supposed to be making a home out of this place, building things, taking what's wild, unkept, tamed, and taming it. We're supposed to be hunting and taking animals as our food for our resources, making clothes, building societies, building a culture. That's what we're supposed to be doing, to be making things out of the wild. So, how would this manifest itself maybe today? How does this... Because my argument's going to be that's still in us. That desire for that is still in us.
Right.
Somewhere, as God placed it in there, I think it can have broken expressions, but I think it can have healthy expressions. And so today, what would it look like for someone to manifest dominion in their life in healthy ways?
Yeah, I think that healthy ways is a good way to put it versus unhealthy. The healthy ways would, of course, like you said, using it for food, but I'd say also using it to, build societies and, even advance technology, like constantly improving upon what we've already used it for.
Well, that's a good thing to talk about. Is it's not wrong to advance technologically.
No,
I think some people think it is, or they think that it's evil that we're growing in our knowledge of the world, or even science. I don't. Could not science be some form of dominion that we take over the earth?
Yeah.
Now, there's a point when you get weird with things and you overstep your bounds as creation, for sure. But I think in general, the concept of science is something that is in no way incompatible with what God has asked us to do, to subjugate the earth, to have dominion over it. We're to do experiments, track how God gave us laws, that the natural laws that work, that he put in place, and to build from that we know what gravity does, and we know what particles do, and we can track these things. And I don't think God is not wanting us to do those things, because to me, that's taking dominion over the earth.
And I didn't know if you can stop me if you're going to get to this later, but I think it's important. Like you said, you mentioned that there are also ways to negatively subdue the earth and negatively use the earth in science. Just for example, two that popped in my head. The first is more relevant to our day today, and that's just with kind of drugs and especially like marijuana. I hear a lot of people try to use this as an argument for why recreational marijuana use should be legal, because we're given dominion over the plants. So God, created the plants, so we use them however we want. So people doing mushrooms and all these different hallucinogenic drugs, which we would say that our minds shouldn't be captive by anything, but we should rather be filled with the Spirit, and that would apply to that. But also I thought of course, in Leviticus, God had to mention bestiality as a sexual sin, that just because man has dominion over the animal doesn't mean he can use it for his personal pleasure in a twisted way.
It's not a boundary-free dominion.
Right.
We still are not. We have laws that God has given. We have very clear delineations of sin, and we can't cross those things. Though we might have some degree of freedom that we can kill an animal. But that would definitely cross a boundary that God gave us explicitly. I always find the weed argument. It's like, because it's in nature, I can do what I want with it. It's like, well, tree limbs are in nature, but I can't hit someone in the head with it. Just because it's there, and it's natural doesn't necessarily mean
point.
that. And there are some. Here's the thing that we don't know the answer to. What came into the earth because of sin that wasn't there before? You know, we're told when God cursed the earth that thorns and thistles now are going to grow. Well, that means they weren't necessarily before. So what is here now that wasn't in the Garden of Eden, that was the original intent, that only because of the curse and the fall did certain things come into, and just because it exists doesn't give it a green light.
That's a good point.
Pun intended, baby.
Yeah, green light.
So anyway, those are good points, though. Dominion doesn't mean 100% boundaryless, willy-nilly, you're the king of the earth. Like, no, you still have to submit to God, who's ultimately in charge.
Right.
It's like being the steward. You know, you are the prime steward. I'm the steward of Gondor. Nobody in Gondor is higher than me, but I'm not the king. I'm not Aragorn. You know, I'm not the guy who can come back at any time and take it from me. So I was thinking about some healthy ways that man can scratch that itch for dominion in his life, because I think every man, if you're operating healthy, is good to want some dominion over something in life. I would say it's masculine to desire that, and that's a good thing. So the number one thing that we can all start with is a family. You are supposed to, as a man, have dominion over your family. Now, just get the caveman out of your head right now, that you're dragging your wife around by the hair like the caveman, and you're dominating your children and whatnot. No, get that out of your heads. But you are leading, and you are basically the king of your castle. It's supposed to be that way, that you are supposed to have. Every man is supposed to. You may not be a CEO. You may not be the greatest basketball player on the earth. You may not have mastered any one particular area of the world. You may not be a war general, but every man should at least have his home where he feels some degree of dominion over, where he can exert his influence in godly ways, and he can have authority that God has given him, and he can feel like he's in charge of something. That is a good, healthy outlet for a man to have that one area of dominion in his life. Yeah,
and I think even with applying it to family structure, you continue with the same principles that you addressed marijuana with, that though you are in dominion, though you're in leadership over your family, you have to remember that you're still in leadership under God. That, Ephesians 5, that gives the structure for how a marriage should work out. It's husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church, and it's for their sanctification. Yep. So you don't just, your wife doesn't just submit to you, and you be a terrible example and do all these terrible, wicked things. But rather she submits as you submit to the Lord.
Yeah, like we said before, it's not a boundaryless dominion that you have. It's not do what I say or else. It's I'm under the leadership of Christ, and in that leadership, I've been given some leadership to it's just like in the Great Commission, when Jesus said, all authority has been given to me, therefore go. We're operating with some borrowed authority as husbands and fathers. And so that's a really good thing. And a lot of men, I think, don't have. One of the big struggles that you see with young men is they're not over anything. They're not, they have nothing to exercise dominion over. So they go into that. When you get to those guys that are locked in the basement playing video games and eating Taco Bell, you know what I'm talking about? Like, you're just like, and it's sad. You feel for them, because it's like what are called the incels, by society, that kind of thing. And Jordan Peterson talks about that frequently, and I know they've gone back and forth with Rogan on that, but that's a real thing, and those are real people like that. And I think when a man has nothing that he oversees, and it might be their fault, like at some point you have to go and take leadership of your own life. But when you go years and years and years after your 18th birthday, and like there's no moment in sight where there's any leadership coming your way. Yeah, I think it's normal for young guys like your age, where you're starting out in life. You kind of know, like, you're an intern. Like, it's cool. No one cares. You're what, 20 years old? 21 years old. Like, that's fine. I was an intern here, older than that. Like, but you're building towards something. There's a path where you know you're going somewhere, and you're plotting your steps, and you're getting ready for something. You're training. At some point, 30, 40, like you want to get out of the training mode and actually have something. Definitely. You want to have dominion over something in your life.
Yes.
So every man needs to feel that. And I think when you don't feel that is when you see men mentally collapse, and they just kind of go into that, woe is me, I'm locked in the basement. Why don't I'll get this out. And honestly, this is the picture of not just video games, but pornography even can play hand in hand.
Definitely.
In the sort of fake dominion attitude. So like you can have real dominion where you can have a wife, and you can have a job, and you can have a family and children and a plot of land, and and that's real life dominion. But then the fake version of that is when you go and try to get that with conquering fake worlds via video games and sleeping with fake digital women, by the thousands via pornography. And like it has that drug effect of feeling real, but it is not real. And it makes you feel like trash over time, the more and more you do it. So I think even looking at that perverted version is calling out to prove the point that is in men to want that. But you can either go for the real thing or you can go for the fake thing. And clearly Satan is doing a lot of damage with the fake thing.
Right.
So that's the family. And I think men desire to lead other men. I think that's a form of dominion. I think at some point you want to, there's a reason why leadership is so popular. You ever notice, like, every time you turn around, John Maxwell or Max Lucado is selling a new book on leadership, or, even back before Bill Hybels fell, like his leadership conferences were sold out. All the people going to these things and buying these books are not leaders in their life. A lot of them are not. Most of the people that buy leadership books don't lead anything. And that's because most people want to be a leader,
right? So
really
they're
bad.
Read about it.
So they read about it to almost like get secondhand fumes of feeling like a leader. Right. I think that's because there's something in men where they want to lead, they desire it. They don't necessarily know how to, but they want to. But that proves the point. And then a man, I think, desires to have dominion or lead over a property or a land. Now, this is almost primal, we might say, where it's kind of like in our blood. But don't you think, do you have, be honest with me, okay? Have you ever had desires to own like a large piece of land in a rural place and rule over that land like a king? Or is that not your thing?
I guess so. I mean, I guess it's not my thing because
100 acres.
It doesn't seem practical.
Well, yeah, I know. But if it was like,
I mean, yeah.
If you could,
I like watching the old westerns where they have like their little plot of land and they have to travel in on their horse and buggy to the city, but like out on their land, like I mean that's their area. They can grow crops. They can ride horses, whatever they want to do. If
you watch those old westerns, I watched Hondo a few weeks ago on Amazon Prime. It was an old John Wayne one, and I was just amazed at like the ideals that were taught in that are so different than today. Like the great goal of that movie for every man was to get married and have a little property out on a big piece of land somewhere. Like that was out west where they could go and have just this big expanse of land, and it was the dream. I think that captures, though, again, the desire to rule and subdue something. That's the reason why that's a common dream for men to have.
Yeah.
And then to look at the idea of subduing or mastering, I put together some things that we commonly see men trying to subdue their own body. A lot of guys are fitness nuts. Clearly, you and I are not. We're fitting donuts in our mouth lately, but I think when you see a man who is very dedicated to his own body and working really hard, that's a form of he's subduing himself. He's getting his own body into order, and it feels good. There's a rewarding, feeling to that when you can do that. We see it with sports when men go really all out at becoming the best they can be at any given sport, the best football, best golfer, best, whatever, tennis player. You try to be the best you go as far as you can go and be really good at something. You're subduing that sport. You're being the best at that game.
You also have kind of a competitive nature that you want to, I guess, subdue it better than the other man.
Well, and especially when you're young, you want to have that competition with other men to see where you stand, and that's a normal thing too. It's why a lot of people want their kids in sports. Maybe you don't want to be in dangerous sports like football where you bash your head against each other.
I can't play football.
Maybe you do, but a lot of parents still, if they don't want the dangerous stuff, still see the value in sports because especially for young men, you're giving that outlet for youthful aggression, that you're giving it a place to go. And as a young man, you want to really know where you stand against other men. Where do I fit in this hierarchy? So sports, skills, people want to. The older you get, I think people get more specialized in a specific skill. You start your life off really a generalist, I guess, and you want to be good at everything. But the older you get, you focus in maybe on one thing that you really like to do, and you'll find people that are like, oh, that's the gardening guy. Oh, Herb Peterman, that's the garden guy. Like he's really into, that man can make some pickled squash or whatever his thing is. Like he really does. Or like, hey, he could get you the homemade jelly, like super super high quality. You'll run across people that like, Scott Few, he's at our really into vehicles and he can fix cars and he's super into that. And you'll run into, and then that kind of leads into the guys who find a specific skill that they just like a lot or they might go into a subject like collecting or going to car shows where maybe they're not doing anything, but they like to buy the cars or collect the cars. And then this is kind of where you get into maybe like nerddom, where you ever step back and think like, what is nerddom? What is it when guys get super into a topic?
Right.
Like is there a hot nerd topic right now where everyone gets deep into?
I don't know.
Are you out of it?
Yeah, the older I get, which I'm only 21. I was talking to my wife about this. I feel less and less relevant. Like I don't know. It's in.
That's
like
good.
for me in high school, middle school. Like, I mean, you ask me a stat of a basketball player, and I was like, oh yeah, well this season he averaged
okay,
fill in the blank.
So answer me this then. Don't you feel like for men it's common to go through multiple phases of getting very obsessed in very specific things?
Yeah.
Like
definitely.
As I look back through my life, and I have friends who I think of, but one in particular that like about every 3 years he hits a new obsession and he goes deep. Like it's photography all in. Like I know all about the cameras and the lenses, and I'm going to get the shot, and I'm into videoing, and then boom, a few years later he's into like motorcycles, and it's all about them. He'll tell you everything about the motorcycles, and then a few years later it's off-roading, with the jeeping and going off and every different tire that can do this to this rock and climb this mountain, and like then it's camping, and then it's like you see that and men do that. Like we get obsessed, and I want to know everything there is to know about this topic, and I'm going to exhaust it, and once I've hit the end of it, I'll probably go do something else. That is dominion. Where it's like I want to conquer something, a topic. I want to conquer a skill. I want to feel in the know about something and do that. That's I think God put that in us to be able to be successful in the world. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, I think God wants us to build things, make things, create things with excellence. I don't think that he's more glorified by people living in an overgrown cottage in the woods. I think he wants men to be out creating order, hacking things with the machete. Dominion is not a bad word. I do not believe dominion is a bad word. It's a Bible word that God commanded us to do. God gave Adam a wild earth full of resources and asked Adam to subdue it, to tame it, to make it livable. And so my challenge for this episode, which I will close on, is men, do not try everything in your power to stamp that out from you. Do not believe when the world tells you that that's bad. Do not believe when the world tells you that that's unhealthy or toxic or whatever the common word might be. God put that there in you so that you would glorify him with your life. It's okay to be masculine and to take dominion and to subdue, but all the while you're doing that under his banner of what is acceptable and glorifies God. But still, it's not a bad word. It's a good impulse to have.
Amen.
Amen. All right. Well, thank you all for listening today. That is another episode of Off Script with Pastor Jared. Share it with a friend and leave us a rating, a kind review even. We could use more of those, and it helps the podcast be seen by more people via the algorithms. You know how those things go. And if you're looking for a Bible-based, Bible-believing church and you're in the Memphis area, would love to see you at Kirby Woods Baptist Church. 10:30 every Sunday is our main worship service, and that's at 6325 Poplar Ave. If you can't make it, online's okay. We would love to see you in person, though. God bless. Have a great week.